Hello and welcome back to Coast FC, the Canadian soccer podcast focused on all things CPL, Canadian Championship, and more. My name is Felipe Ojejo.
And I'm Mike Rice.
And we are back after a lengthy three and a half week break. Myself and Mike had a couple of trips, a couple of vacations that kind of didn't really align all that well.
Yeah, no, we didn't sort that out too well.
No, we didn't. And it wasn't like we forgot about the podcast. We tried every week to try to find a time, and we simply could not. So now we're finally back to our regular scheduled programming ourselves, and hopefully that means that we're back to usual time as well for the podcast. But Mike, how have you been over this last 3.5 weeks that we've been gone?
Good, but it does. It feels good to be back and chatting about it because, as you can probably imagine, there's not too many other people I chat about this CPL with over here.
That's very true. That's very true. You would be stuck just talking at a wall, pretty much for you. But yeah, we're very happy to be back. And today we're going to have a part one of the part two or two-part series of basically a catch-up video for like the mid-season catch-up. We haven't talked about what has been happening in the last 3-4 weeks, and a lot has happened in the last 3-4 weeks, enough that we thought that instead of going back into a sort of a weekly roundup, we'd go through and have a basically huge catch-up episode. We're going to split it into two, talking about the top 4 teams in this episode and the bottom 4 teams in the next episode, from the way that the table looked when we left to the way that the table looked now that we've come back. It looks very different, and we're going to talk about all of the reasons why very shortly. But before we dive into it, remember to follow us on all of our socials at Coast to Coast FC, as well as finding us on YouTube under the same name. Now we're going to talk about the team that's currently in first place, that I think was a little bit of maybe not a surprise given how good of the team is, but definitely a team that I don't think we had in mind as the team at the top of the table when we initially had our break. But we're going to be talking about Forge FC and the very fact that they are, as I just mentioned, back at the top of the table. They've had a quite a good last 4 games since we've been gone. You see the 3-0 win against Halifax really kicked them into gear, because aside from a little blip against Valor where arguably they shouldn't have lost that game, aside from that one, they've had some really, really strong performances. A 3-0 win against Ottawa last Saturday, and then the midweek 2-0 win over Halifax Wanderers on this past Wednesday. I was actually at that Saturday game too, and in Forge, in Hamilton for that match, and it was a really good game. And Forge were just super efficient, and I think that's been the main story of them in the last few games, in the last few weeks. I mean, since they lost 4-3 against Ottawa, they've only lost 1 game. They've been in a really good vein of form after a little bit of inconsistency in the earlier parts of the season. Mike, what have you made of Forge and their rise to the top?
Yeah, I think what's been really good is seeing like players like Tristan Borges and David Chouanier like properly turning up in games. Like, I think we criticised them slightly last year, where you could go through part of the regular season and maybe they weren't making the impression that you kind of hope they would, but this year has been they've been much more consistent, Forge, of like lineup wise, as well as like the performances the players are putting in. That sort of front 3 last year that rotated so often, like who was playing down the middle, who was playing on the wings. There isn't that question anymore. Kwesi Poku's been fantastic up front. I guess we'll have to see what goes on with him, but this year their weird thing, I don't know about you, but their weird thing has been the defense. That's it seems like, okay, last year we will rotate the forward line, and we had a few issues of getting forward. This year maybe we'll rotate the defensive line a little bit more, but we'll stay quite consistent up front. They're a funny team, but I don't know about you, but we always expect them to be up there by the end of the year, and it just feels like maybe they're doing it a little bit quicker than we kind of realized, maybe took our eye off the ball and thought, oh, we'll catch up in Forge in a month's time and they'll probably be where they are now, but maybe they're a month ahead schedule.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, pretty much, yeah. They've been they're peaking earlier than what we expected
Yeah.
them to. But yeah, on your point about the rotation that they've had, I think that the forward line, you have the quality of Tristan Borges, David Chouanier, Benny Banga, Nana and Poma's come in and done quite well for them as
Yeah.
well. So you have four really strong options for players that can play on the wing, even in midfield, like Borges has. And you have a player like Kwasi Poku, who might be on the move and quite quickly, but for now he's a Forge player and has been in hot form for quite some time. Like, it's funny because even when I was in Hamilton and I was talking to the people that were usuals there, they still couldn't quite believe the kind of player that Kwasi Poku was. That the fact that he was a wing back and now he's one of the best strikers in the league. So it goes to show just how meteoric his rise has been, and no wonder his stocks are high.
It's
But
really great credit, isn't it, to his footballing intelligence, how quickly he picked that up.
Yeah, because that's one of the things that is most impressive is how much of a fox in the box he is. His goal sense, his positioning is really, really strong for a player that hasn't really played, at least at the top level, in this position before.
No.
I've known from talking to some people before that he's played pretty much everywhere. He's played in defense, as a wingback, as a winger, as a central midfielder at times as well. So he's very much a Swiss Army knife, but it seems he has found his home at the striker position, and with MLS clubs lurking, it might be a cause of concern for Forge, because as well as they're playing right now, and because they're so solid in the way that they're playing and their philosophy, they're kind of doing away with some of the inconsistencies that we saw earlier in the season, and now they're just efficient. I think is the biggest word. They're so efficient that the games that they're winning, like the game against Ottawa, you could say the game against Halifax, the earlier one as well, they're not complete blowouts in terms of, they just blew the team out of the water. The 2-0 win against Halifax might be different, but you look at the 3-0 win that they had at home against Halifax, where Poku scored 2 and then Poma scored 1. Halifax looked like the better team through a lot of that, and yet they lost 3-0. Ottawa, the game against Ottawa, it was pretty much 50-50, and yet they won 3-0. They're just so efficient on the ball right now, and the way that they can just be so overwhelming in the attack makes them such a fun side to watch, and it's no surprise that they are playing at the level that they're playing right now.
Yeah, and they say, I mean, that's a great point. I just quickly gone back and checked the possession again, when they won 3-0 against Ottawa, who were top of the league, were so expected to keep just running away with things. They had 39% possession in that game and still came away with a 3-0 win. And we've spoken about what's really been so impressive from what we spoke about at the beginning of the year, with Kalongo coming in for Tristan Henry, someone so young replacing someone so experienced, with players like Oluwabi Bellu coming in and replacing Mandrikar James. This is a young defensive players coming in who are stepping up and have done fantastically. They've been able to rely on that defense and the midfield to just control a game, and to the other team can have the ball, but they're not threatening as much as they should do with the amount of time they get on the ball.
Yeah. And I think that you look at the fact that it's not even just the young players, but everyone that's sort of been in rotation. I haven't seen a player come into a lineup and play particularly poorly. You look at the fact that Malik Olowabi Bellewu hasn't been playing all that much, after such a great start to the season.
Yeah.
And you see Garvin Metusala take his place, and he's been really solid as well for Forge in the last few weeks. And you have the back four of Barra, Metusala, Ashinori Johnson, and Malcolm Duncan, and you have, a still really good side, and that's without a player like Malik Olowabi Bellewu, who was, for us, one of the contenders for defenders of the season earlier in the year. It shows the fact that they have strength and depth, but more than anything is the consistency of the players. The players, when they are called upon, they show up, and it doesn't matter necessarily what the other team is doing. Forge understand their philosophy, understand their playing style, and that's why they're able to get these big wins despite not having a lot of possession, which is a little weird because that's the kind of bread and butter of
Yeah.
Forge, is that every time that they play, they dominate possession. But maybe, Bobby lately has kind of shifted a little bit their kind of philosophy, and instead of
Mm.
being, mostly just dominating possession, now not necessarily counterattacking, but they are still very direct, a little bit more direct than I saw them before,
Yeah.
and they are, lethal now when they
Yeah.
are attacking after winning back possession in transition. So maybe a couple of stylistic changes from Bobby has allowed Forge to kind of reach this new gear, but whatever it might be, it's really working for them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's impressive, and I know we'll in the next episode when we talk about some of the teams down the bottom. Forge have made these slight changes that you mentioned there in like the sort of tactical style, but they're slight and they're looking to get the best out of. Whereas some teams have gone too big and it hasn't worked. Whereas Forge's changes have been really clever, and they've given their forwards space to attack, and it's just worked out fantastically for them.
Yeah. And I think that the only real, like I mentioned earlier, cause for concern from them right now is what happens if Kwasi Poku
Yeah.
does leave, because he has interest from, I believe, MLS clubs mostly, and perhaps player clubs from abroad.
Yeah, I
But
think
it's
someone mentioned because was he on trial over in Sweden, I believe, last year in the like in the off season last year. I think he went abroad and did had a few sort of sessions abroad. So maybe there's still people keeping tabs on him, and we'll probably we've got a closer eye on him after how he's been playing this year.
yeah. So there is definitely interest, to the point
Mm,
where Bobby came out and mentioned that the reason he wasn't in the squad for in the game against Halifax was because of that interest.
yeah.
So it might be sooner rather than later
Mm,
that Kwasi leaves, and then it becomes a question of who steps up. Because I mean, the Hamilton Forge have an advantage in the fact that they still have one of the league's top goal scorers, if not no, the league top goal
yeah.
scorer, all time
Yeah.
top goal
Yeah,
scorer.
it's not exactly going down into the dregs of the striking
No,
pool, is it?
exactly. In Taron Campbell, and then an ex MLS striker and Jordan Hamilton, so they have
Yeah,
quality off the bench,
yeah.
but
Oh,
it's
poor
more of
Bobby.
the
He's
fact
got
of their
so
impact. Yeah, no, it's just they're spoiled for choice. We say we frame it as a concern. It might not be that big of a concern. It just might
no.
be a bit of a difference. But still, I think for
Mm,
me, it's more of the fact that Taron Campbell and Hamilton play differently from the
yeah,
way that Kwasi Poku
definitely. Yeah.
plays right now for Forge. And that's the only thing that I don't know if you want to have such a big change in the
Mm,
team right now. And yes, Campbell is more than a worthy replacement for
yeah.
Poku, but how will he affect the team's synergy? How will he affect the tactical approach to games now that he's there? Because he's more of a target man kind of player. He likes to be linked up rather than be kind of
Mm,
that poacher.
yeah.
So I think things will have to change for Forge if he becomes the starting striker once more, and then or potentially Hamilton as well. So I think that'll be the only thing that might be something to worry about. But yeah, overall, aside from that, Forge are in a very very good position to be in right now.
Yeah. We do. I mean, we joke like about that, but you're right. Like they are slightly different players to Kwasi Poku, and I know they didn't lose their roles because of their ability, but Kwasi Poku took it. Like from when players were unavailable, he took that role and earned it, and he made himself undroppable. And these players now have got to fight their way back in. They've got to remind us straight away why they deserve to be back in there, and remind us of all the qualities they've had amongst a team that have got very used to winning very comfortably with a different type of striker. You're right; it's going to take. It could be a little bit. It could be a little bit tricky at first. I'm not saying it's going to be. I'm not saying it's going to be difficult, but it may take a little. There'll be some sort of growing pains. Maybe I guess it's the closest thing you can say.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think it'll be anything necessarily catastrophic.
Yeah,
it'll
we're
be
really trying hard to find a concern, aren't we? I think
yeah, yeah. We're fighting hard to find a concern with the team that's playing as well as Forge are right now. But we'll see what happens if Poku does leave. Obviously,
Mm,
fantastic for him and fantastic
yeah,
for the overall vision of what this league is about, which is fostering
definitely.
young Canadian talent and and building them to be able to get better opportunities. So
Yeah,
hopefully he does, follow in the footsteps of like a Wubens Passius or Ozaze de Rosario and takes the kind of next step
yeah.
in his career. And we'll see what happens with him in the future. But now let's move on to the team that is probably the most informed team in
Mm,
the league right now, despite being second. And that is York United.
yeah.
Because right now, York United have one loss in their last 10 matches. Only one loss in their last 10 matches. And three draws and 7 wins in the last 11. And it's mighty impressive,
Mm.
especially considering that this is the York United and very much the same York United that we saw earlier this season, and a lot of the same core that we saw last season. But Benjamin Mora has come in and has given this. I don't think it's we can call it a new manager bounce anymore. It's the
Not anymore, yeah.
new manager high jump, like
Yeah.
world record,
It's a
because
pole
they're
vault.
playing with a confidence and like just a determination that has been unseen in a York United
Mm,
squad, I think, ever.
yeah. It's so impressive. Like, yeah, like you say, we waited for that. Oh well, will this new manager bounce? When will it come to an end? How will they deal with the difficulties? And they haven't won every game, like you've mentioned. Like they've had a couple of and they've had games where they've failed to get a win, but they don't look like the same team. Like the York team of last year would have reacted completely differently to some of these results where they didn't get the 3 points. And it's so impressive how quickly they appear to have all bought in to this new philosophy under Benjamin Mora. And it's so impressive how he's orchestrated this, like within what appears to be minutes of touching down in Canada and going, right, this is my team, come on.
Yeah, I would love because I've seen some snippets of him, obviously from press
Mm,
conferences stuff like that. But he is of you can just tell that he is such a fiery character, but in a very composed manner.
yeah.
Where he is like, I feel like he demands your attention
Mm.
just by being around.
Yeah.
His presence is unreal.
Mm.
It's incredible the impact that he's had, and he's only suffered one loss since he's come in.
Mm.
And he's already been involved in a third of the season. He's
Yeah.
been here for a third of the season. He's only had suffered one loss, and that was the 1-0 loss to Valor. Valor love to upset the teams at the top
Heck,
right
I
now.
mean, I'm looking forward to our next episode chatting about
Because
that.
yeah, we'll have a lot to talk about and not only to Valor but also as well as Pacific Vancouver. Expect the next episode to probably be a little bit
Yeah.
longer than this one because a lot more to talk about with the teams at the bottom. But yeah, no, Valor, York United have been so impressive under Mora, and I think
Mm,
it's just the tactical discipline that he has with a
mm,
team. Like you understand, everyone understands what they have to do. I feel like before under Martin Nash, you could see sort of the style that Martin Nash wanted to play, but it didn't. It felt like some players maybe had maybe a little bit too much freedom, or maybe didn't quite understand what was happening, and there
mm.
was a little bit of disconnect at times in the way that York and I were playing. And then when they went a goal down, there was a mental lapse as well. There was kind of like a breakdown,
Yeah,
and it was just lacking.
completely.
Now under Benjamin Mora, even when they concede a goal, it's like, okay, that's fine. Let's keep going.
Yeah.
Let's just keep going. And when they score a goal, it's like, okay, that's fine. Let's just keep going. Like it's just the discipline in the team
Mm.
is incredible. And the fact that once again, this is happening to York United,
Yeah.
the team whose discipline has been in question since we've started the podcast,
Yeah.
is again is just
Mm,
another of the many things that Benjamin Mora has been able to just surprise everybody about, and just that you can tell that the players respect him and they respect the style, the philosophy that he's brought into the club, and it's been a pleasure to watch and to follow. And I feel like I'm still surprised that they're doing it, and it's getting to the point where I wonder if it'll stop being a surprise that they're
Yeah,
getting consistent results pretty much
yeah,
week in and week out now.
that's it. I mean, like you say, we like just jumping on what you said completely. It's defensively they looked organised when he started. He, like you say, from what Martin Nash was doing previously, yeah, things you felt like players knew their role to a degree. But in this new system, the way Mora has done it, it seems like they're more aware of what they're doing, but they're also more aware of what their teammates are meant to be doing, which wasn't the case beforehand. Like if things went wrong, they were blaming each other, they were getting angry, and it was because there wasn't that full understanding. And they've made signings, yeah, but there's still quite a lot of these players who have really stepped up under Benjamin Mora, like that you can see of making leaps and bounds better than the players like Noah Batney was good last year, but now you're seeing like a whole new sort of composure to him where he's able to play in this system where it's like this was a young player who in this club, where's he going to go? Like there's the concerns of the chaos around, but now everything's calmed down. You've got like players like him are able to keep developing. Max Ferrari, like there's so many of them that they're now in a system where they can actually learn and grow as players. Whereas before it kind of felt like this could go either way. You have no idea. There's no way of calling it. So like as a club, like as owners buying this team and creating this for fans coming down, they can see something now that they're gonna look to and go, actually, well, now we can see what we're trying to do for the next 6 months, the next year, the next 2 years. Like there looks like there's a reason to be optimistic about where this club is going, whereas before it was like you must turn up every week and go, what? Well, who's what York is going to be here this week?
Yeah. I mean, I just you look at I really like to look at not when when a team is on form like this. I like to look at their big performances. So like that 4-1 win against Ottawa is
Yeah.
obviously one of the highlights of the season because that was first place at the time,
Yeah.
and they just absolutely smashed them, and deservedly so. You know, it would look close, but again, it was a sort of thing of they were just so just their ability to be lethal in the attack,
Yeah.
just to convert their chances against a team that, again, you look at the defense, you look at their midfield, you look at their attack. These are not easy players to get the best
No.
of, but they manage to be able to do that. And you look at you look at that match and you think, okay, that this is a team that means business. You know, being three, it was 1-1 at halftime, and then second half score 3 goals unanswered.
Yeah.
Just turn up the volume. I feel like the biggest difference between York United and Ottawa, which we'll talk about in a little bit, is that mentality, because it was especially obvious in the second half of that one. But also you look at the draws that they've gotten, like the draw that they got against Vancouver and the draw they got against Pacific. And both of those were games that they were unlucky not to win. They arguably should have won both of those games. Oh, well, they had more chances, more clear-cut chances than both of the BC sides.
Yeah.
But the fact that they are able to get wins at home and at worst get draws away from home, that's the perfect recipe. That's what you want pretty much, for a team is you want to get maximum points at home and try not to lose away. And that's how you know that you'll for sure be in the playoffs and fighting for the title. And I think the fact that they've been able to consistently do that under Benjamin Mora is so impressive. And it's something that makes me think this is a team that will be fighting to the very end for that top spot.
Definitely. I completely agree with you. I mean, if I want to, I was trying to think of a way to look at it from the other side, where you just like the draws, and they were getting quite a bit. They're not, apart from that 4-1 win over Atletico Ottawa, you've got to go back all the way till the 11th of May when they won by more than one goal. So if you're really being pedantic, like we're trying to look at like the positives and that, like, and the concerns of every team, like if there's anything, and if you're being really pedantic, then yeah, they're struggling to create that distance, but that just makes them like cavalry. And cavalry are topside as well. Like they are a team where like defensively they look really good. And yeah, they're a new team, and like you said already, like Benjamin Moore he's only a third of a season into his career as a York United manager, and to already be at a level where you can, in theory, look at the results and say, okay, well, they're about the same team as Cavalry. Cavalry won it last year. like already, like I mean, you can be really picky if you really want to find something, but it's just such an incredible turnaround.
Yeah. And I think that, if you want to look at things that may be cause for concern, I mean, there isn't much.
No.
Similar to Forge, I think even less than Forge is, how will they perform against their rivals Forge? Because we've seen that even when York United were doing well, like relatively well early in the season under Nash, when they went against Forge, they just capitulated.
Yeah.
A little bit of that kind of, like you said here, the little brother syndrome in front of them. And I feel like they've shown that against a side like Ottawa, who was first. Sure, they've been in not great form, but they can smash a team like that. Now they gotta prove that against a team that is in form, like Forge. And I believe that they have today they're facing Cavalry.
Got Cavalry in, so
at the time
yeah,
of recording.
and then Forge the week after, the weekend after. So it's a big week for them.
If they can get, some really good results from those two matches, that might be. I hesitate to say season defining, but it could very well be a little bit season defining for them, because at the very.
I mean, what would if York come away with 4 points from these two games? Like you're looking at them as title contenders, aren't you?
Yeah, no, genuinely, and I mean they already are right now. But but with what is it? 5 games remaining? 5 or no, 8 games remaining. After those 2 games, like you can see them really be up in that fight for the top, having already played Cavalry, Forge for the last time, Cavalry for the second last time. Like it's looking pretty good if they can get some results from that. But the other thing for me is like they've been pretty lucky comparatively to other sides with their injuries.
Yeah.
In the sense that they started with some pretty bad injuries. Now they're in a really good form where you see the back line, the back three of Noah Badne that you talked about how much he's impressed. Frank Stirring and Oswaldo Leon, who have been also very solid. That back
getting Stirring back after a while off, wasn't he? So that's
exactly. They didn't have Leon or Stirring for a while. Now they have both of them back, and they've been consistent. Though that back three. You look at also the biggest performers for them in the last few weeks has been obviously Brian Wright, Mo Babuli, and Juan Cordova. If they start to get some injuries to either that back three or those really crucial 3 attacking midfield players, there's where I would like to see how Benjamin Mora and York United respond, because they can field their best team pretty much week in and week out right now. And that's helping them a lot. But if they start to get any injuries or suspensions in the last 10 games, there's where I feel like we could start to see not a cause for concern, but we can start to see maybe like, okay, this is now where you kind of have to prove yourself as that you have the wherewithal to be able to adjust on the fly and still be able to churn out these kinds of strong performances.
It would be interesting. I mean, Brian Wright's been in incredible form. Like, and if he hits a sticky patch or gets injured, where do the goals come from? It's like, and this is I mean, it's the same questions you have about Cavalry. Not trying to drill that point down too hard, but there's going to be times, but we've seen players really step up for this team, like week in, week out. Elijah Adekugbe's been like much better than he was last year. Time like you've got players that are stepping up, and he's put them in better positions, which maybe is why why they're not getting the injuries that maybe they would have had last year, and definitely they're not getting the suspensions they got last year. I mean, Austin Ricci's still trying to get something, I think, but we might be able to rely on him. But Mo Babuli as like this second striker has been a great, like he's got him sorted, and he looks like he can enjoy the game so much more. Like there's less pressure on him, which is now giving him even more ability to shine in games. It's just everything seems to be like he's Ben Moore has turned up with the Midas touch, and everything's gone swimmingly. But yeah, we'll see if and when difficulties arise. But it's yeah, I'm speechless about York, because I was like, when Martin Ash started the year again, we were just waiting for more comedy throughout the year, weren't we?
Yeah, and I'll have to look back at our season predictions, because I feel like we might be in for a little bit of a shocker now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which we will defend with, again, this was with Martin Nash in mind.
Yeah.
We had no idea who Benjamin Mora was. So
No, yeah.
we'll have to put a little asterisk beside that prediction when we review it at the end of the season. But yeah, just if you're a York United supporter, you're living the life right now, because I don't think we've ever seen York play at a level in the last
No.
6 years, in the 6 years of this season. So yeah, a lot of good things to be happy about for York United. But now let's talk about a team that has a lot of things to be sad about in Atletico Ottawa in third, because when we were before our break, when we were talking about Atletico Ottawa, we were talking about how they're in first place, and how they kind of let a couple results slip, but they were still, like, I think it was 4 points ahead of second.
Yeah, they had a nice cushion.
They still had a pretty decent cushion. And then literally 3.5 weeks later, now we're at Atletico Ottawa third, and having lost their last 3 matches, and quite heavily in 2 of them as well. Yikes. I don't even know where to start. It's just been a huge mid-season slump, a hugely unexpected mid-season slump, at least for those that might not be looking at them very, 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 very closely, like some of the fans might be. Because again, the talent that they have on their roster, you would never expect them to be losing 4-1 to York United and 3-0 to Forge, and even losing 2-1 at home to Cavalry as well in the last 3 matches. Is just it's such a shocking run of form for the opposite reasons that we were talking about for York United.
Yeah, it's the thing that's as a neutral watching Atletico Ottawa, is the thing that's so infuriating is how slow they are going forward. Like they'll add bursts of pace, like obviously Mateo Debriere and Balou Tabla, they've got pace, they will run, but the whole build up and the way they're getting forward during a match, like it's just the tempo is completely dropped off, and then they wait till they're chasing games to then try and pick up the speed and be a bit more direct. But these teams that have gone and got the success and they've got the wins in these last 3 games have defended comfortably. They've allowed Ottawa to have the ball, because Ottawa aren't attacking with pace and threat. They are being a little bit too predictable, and they're getting beaten on the counter attack because they've got attacking players who are getting forward. They're filling the final third with players, and then the turnover comes and there's space in behind, and it just feels like they got to a point now where this. I don't want to be lazy and just say that they're just relying on, okay, well, we've got the names and we've got the quality, we'll get there. But they aren't challenging their players to do new things. They aren't challenging, like Carlos Gonzalez isn't changing how they're attacking. They're attacking the same way every week. And they're coming up against a bit of a brick wall against teams who are just defending resolutely, defending organized, and will hit you on the break.
Yeah. Yeah. It's part of me, because a lot of what I've seen from Athletic Ottawa fans is they're already hashtag cargo out. They're already the hashtags trending in the Ottawa spheres already. Um, and on one hand, it kind of feels like, okay, Ottawa's still in a good position. They're still third.
Yeah,
But I
yeah,
kind of hear it as well because, like you mentioned, things have just gone stale
yeah.
with Ottawa in a way that kind of feels like when you obviously hindsight's 2020, but you look at the season, kind of feels expected because you saw the way that they started. No one knew what to make of them. They
You're
started
right.
so
Yeah.
hotly. But in a
Mm.
league where you face each other 4 times, you play the same way every game. Doesn't matter who you have in your arsenal. If teams figure out how to deal with them, they're nullified.
Yeah,
It becomes sort of
yeah. You're right.
like a zero sum game in a sense. And if you don't switch things up, you're not going to be able to surprise
Mm.
managers, surprise teams. And I like a manager that falls on their sword and likes to play a certain way. But there's a big difference between you know believing in your play style and then maybe being naive. And
Yeah.
no, I'm not saying necessarily that Cargo is a naive manager
No.
because he's far better than us. We're armchair analysts here. But
Exactly. Yeah.
it does feel like you should, with the quality that you have, both off and on, like off the bench and in your starting 11, you have to be able to switch things up. You
Yeah.
have to be able to see things differently. But it feels like it's around the same starting 11 all the time, around the same sort of play style. And on paper, it's a great play style.
Mm.
But we're starting to see just players not be able to perform all that well. Like you see the way that Matteo De Brienne and Chris Twardek started the season, these attacking fullbacks that you're like, how are they ever going to deal with them? Well, they've dealt with them.
Yeah.
And now you don't see as much output from them. You see, like, yes, you can see Balu Tabla is still kind of the tricky star winger
Mm.
that we have come to expect, but it feels like he's not as effective because the players around him, the people around him, are not kind of connecting with him as much. Manny Aparicio is sort of the same. Ollie Bassett, hugely. I feel like Ollie Bassett has been invisible, at
Yeah.
least to me, in the last few games.
Mm.
And we've talked about it before, in episodes past about the fact that with so much star power, somebody has to sort of fade. It feels like Ollie Bassett. It's incredulous to say, given how important he's been to Athletic Ottawa since he's been at Athletic Ottawa, but he's sort of faded
Exactly.
into the background.
Yeah.
And I don't want to, I don't think you can pinpoint one reason as to their poor form, but there has to be, a cause for concern for Cargo to have Ollie Bassett be so quiet
Mm.
for them. But yeah, just one of the many issues right now. Like defensively, Cargo at the very least is a good defensive manager. He's proven that in the last few seasons. Yes, the end of the last season, mentality issues caused them to concede and added time so many times, but still he's a good defensive manager. And then you see the way that he's playing right now, or the way that he set up his team right now, and you think that they would defend better, but they don't. They concede so many goals. I mean, they've conceded 9 goals in the last 3 games. 9 goals in the last 3 games.
It's mad, isn't it?
Unheard of
Yeah.
for Carlos Gonzalez and Atletico Ottawa. At the very least, they're resolute defensively. So there's a lot of things going wrong. You mentioned a stale and slow attack. I just talked about the defense uncharacteristically being leaky. Ollie Bassett be quiet. I mean, is there something that Carlos Gonzalez can do? I mean, there's still 10 games left, so it's not like it's
Yeah.
necessarily alarm bells. Well, I think alarm bells are ringing, but I don't think it's like DEFCON 1 yet.
No.
But what do you see him being able to do to turn this around? Because it feels like there's too many fires right now for him to put out
Mm.
in a short amount of time.
I think that's the biggest concern, and like to go even further on what you're saying, like we had the same concerns about them last year. Like they continued in the same style of play throughout the entire season, and they were giving up goals late in games, and they just continued. Like, Carlos Gonzalez wasn't switching things up. He wasn't making big enough changes. He wasn't doing much, and it just felt like the same mistakes just kept getting repeated over and over again. And I think the go out shouts are a little bit premature.
That's premature.
Yeah, but I can understand why a fan would be frustrated after having seen, okay, well, we've had the defensive problems last year. Now our attack was great and it stopped being great, but you're still doing the same thing. Like, where's the innovation? You're not after huge sweeping changes, but you need something that's starting to free up and give players space in the final third. But they are in the same positions each week, and they are facing the same challenges each week, and they're trying to overcome these challenges in the exact same way each week. It's almost like the definition of insanity.
Yeah. And I think that, you look at also how they've performed in, like, let's say the last 4 matches, and like, I think it's 2 or 3 of them, they were leading. And then, and especially specifically in the second half, that's where they seem to concede the most goals. You look at the way that York United scored 3 unanswered in their match. Cavalry scored 2 through Ali Musi after the 70th minute, and Ottawa just got 1 back in the 87th. But it could, like, the fact that they lost 2-0 was pretty much deserved in that one. And then Forge scored 2 in the first half and scored the 3rd one in the second half. But still, you're seeing a team that is struggling, I think, to be able to perform well in both halves. Even in the game against Valor too, they had a goal in the opening 30 seconds. The Temi Azanoglu own goal against Valor 4 weeks ago, and they still went on and did not win that game. They drew 2-2. Even when they have good starts, they can't see it through. And I think that's the biggest concern for me overall, because we've seen that before last season. We've seen that be an issue. And, it's getting to a point where, like, it's not an isolated incident. It's not a coincidence. It's now a pattern.
Yeah.
And that's something that he needs to be able to address, because they are the authors of their own downfall right now. A lot of the goals they conceded are from mistakes. Simple mistakes that you would not expect a Carlos Gonzalez side to be committing. So it's tough right now. It's tough right now for Atletico Ottawa. And, I think what the next match against Pacific, which is tomorrow, Saturday, away from home. Pacific haven't been doing great, but they're still a tough side to break down and score against. They need to show something different against Pacific if they have really, like, I don't want to say any hope, because they're only 2 points behind Forge and York.
Exactly, yeah.
But if they want to kind of stop this from becoming a runaway freight train of bad form, they still have time to be able to turn this around and get right back into the fight. But for me, it's just, it's about doing it now, because you don't want this to become a pattern any longer.
No.
Then it has to be.
Last season sort of blurs your thoughts on them, because I think, because when you see them and you look at them and you look at the players individually, you think, okay, that's a quality team, they'll work it out. But because of what happened last year, and then this sneaks in, you sort of got it in the back of your mind, like, they didn't make the playoffs because they kept making the same mistakes and it cost them. Are they, like, tell me you're going to learn from this?
Yeah. He has to. They have to. They must. Yeah. They must, or else he's gonna have some questions asked of him at the end of the season, because they can't let it slip again. They cannot let it slip again. But yeah, I think that it's just about maybe bettering their mentality, switching some things around, and having somebody step up for them to be able to perform, because they need to turn this around and quickly. especially with York and Forge on such great form, and Cavalry, who we'll talk about right now,
Yeah.
also getting back into some form. So
Mm.
Ottawa better,
Yeah.
not only look ahead but look over their shoulder, because Cavalry is only 2 points behind too. So Cargo has some serious, deep thinking to do for Ottawa to be able to turn this around. But now let's move on to the fourth and final team that we're going to talk about in
Yeah.
this episode, which is Cavalry FC, last season's regular season champions. They're not in as bad as a form as we saw. Actually, they're in a much better form than when we
Yeah.
left off. I think the last time that we talked about them, they had just drawn Forge after losing to York.
I don't know what it is, but they definitely had drawn. Like, it was constant draws.
As is the trend.
Yeah.
But they've broken that trend in the last 3 weeks with
Yeah.
3 straight wins. And they've been scoring goals. 3 goals in their last one against Halifax Wanderers, 2 goals against Ottawa, and 1 goal against Vancouver. Maybe against York United, they'll score 4 goals to continue the trend of scoring 1 more after each match. But yeah, it's been quite good for Cavalry FC. They're again, I wouldn't say they're firing on all cylinders compared to Forge
No.
or York.
Yeah.
But they're still able to now do what they did last season so well, which is grind out wins.
Yeah, definitely. And they're looking a little bit more dangerous going forward, which helps that you can grind out those wins when teams are becoming a little bit more concerned about your attack again. They've made those changes. Aussie out, German in on one side on the wing, and getting. I mean, I'm going to skip quickly to our second point because it's so good. Like Ali Musi being back. Wow. Wow.
They have needed him.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
That performance coming back, and just when you see him playing at the top of his form, like you're all of a sudden, I can only imagine the good people of Alberta, like straight away edge of the seats, like this is it again. We're coming.
He's been 2 goals and 1 assist in the last 2 matches that he's been back.
Yeah.
Like, that's instant impact player. And that's the kind of player that they've been crying out for, because they've had struggles with injuries. They have struggles in goal scoring and that having that spark. Obviously, Akio is out for a long term. Musi was out. Camargo was even out for a little while. And like, that's basically your whole creative power right there being out. And they had to, be able to try to find some way to deal with it. But now with Musi being back, Camargo also coming back, they found that creative spark once more. And even though maybe we don't see their attacking output be so strong as other teams, Warchowski hasn't scored in the last 3 matches. Other players have at least stepped up for them.
Exactly. And
you have players that, like, Dan Klomp came out with a brace in the last match against Halifax Wanderers, which is like, where did you come from? It's been a hot minute, I'm pretty sure. So
trying to catch up.
Exactly. So I think that for me, that's the thing that I've really liked, is that Musi has been a huge breath of fresh air for them. But with his return, also some players have sort of returned to form a little bit, and that they've been able to step up a little bit more. And I think that for Tommy Wilden Jr., having the ability to call upon these players and know that they can deliver is something that I know he values very, very, very much. And he'll be so happy to have them playing the way that they're playing right now, because this is the form that we saw them. Short sample size, only 3 matches, but this form is what won them the regular season last season, and I'm sure he's happy to at least see what might be a return to it.
Yeah, that's it. Like, with those little bits of sort of creativity coming back in, and those different types of threats, they've jumped up. Like they've gone from this team that are a little way off, but with so few defeats, they've immediately catching like the top pack, and like just a little run of form has got them in that, and it's just going to fill them full of confidence. Like, getting those types of players back. I mean, because they've got their workhorses, and they've got their players who will grind and grind, get like for 90 minutes week in, week out, and make it very difficult for the opposition. But they've been so unfortunate with the availability, like you say, of those creative players. And when you get a few of them back, and you get a few of them back to full fitness, it takes the pressure off those guys that are trying to keep the opposition at bay, and it forces them back a bit, and they're dealing with less attacks because they're getting the ball a bit more, and they're forcing fullbacks to be a little bit more defensive than they were maybe in the beginning part of the season, where they were getting forward and Cavalry were struggling to get themselves up the pitch at times. And you need those players like that will strike a little bit of fear into the opposition just by reading their name on the team sheet.
Yeah. And I feel like I've one player that's really stepped up in the last few games has been Maël Henry.
Really good.
Really, really, really good. You see the goal that he scored against Vancouver kind of brought him back into the foreground, and then since then, the game against Ottawa and especially the game against Halifax, I thought he was superb. He's been so good for them lately, and like Velling as well. Like the way that they've been able to pair up and the way that he's playing, it just feels like Tommy Wilden Jr. has been able to find a new gear for Henry, and he's taken it in full stride. And I'm so impressed. He was a player that we rated very highly from before, when he was, when he got traded to Cavalry from Vancouver, and even beyond. He's a player that we rate highly. So it's very nice for him to kind of come into his own form now in these last 3 matches, and hopefully keep his place in the starting 11 as they continue.
Yeah, like you say, like we did chat about. I remember sort of when we were talking about Cavalry getting towards the end of that season, and we were looking and going, yeah, they're getting the ball, but they're only getting 2 or 3 shots on target a game, and yeah, you're winning, but at some point when you get into the playoffs, that grind isn't going to that might catch up with you. And their midfield wasn't getting the forwards of the ball, and Maël Henry was showing those little signs of being able to like be this creative spark. And you're so right saying that. Like now we've brought him in, and he's finding his new sort of role in this team. He's got the quality in there. Like, and if Tommy Wilden Jr. can keep getting him doing those little bits more, it's another player that can just unlock a pass. He can create something for someone else, but he can also do it himself. He's got a really sort of, the way he's playing right now is like, that's an exciting player for the future for this team, but also for now.
He's been very impressive and very fun to watch as well for Cavalry. And they did bring in also Lowell Wright from the ex Whitecaps FC2 player, and he hasn't scored. He hasn't had that much time, but from what I've seen, the glimpses that he has, it's been pretty decent. And those are the kinds of players that they kind of need, because if he can come in, and if they're struggling to find that goal, he can kind of be that impact player. One thing I do remember from his time with Whitecaps FC2 is that at the very least, he's a pretty decent goal scorer. That's probably what they're gonna want to have in case things get tough, and to be able to have some difference makers on the bench. But yeah, I think that for Tommy Wilden Jr. right now, the biggest thing that they need to now do is establish that consistency. They need to be consistent now. Now that they're only 4 points off top, they need to be consistent to stay there. Because in this league, you start to lose a couple games, you start to drop a couple points, and you're already tumbling your way potentially out of the playoffs.
Yeah, exactly.
They need to be consistent if they want to cement themselves in that top 4, top 5, and even beyond, maybe fighting for first place or fighting for second or the top 3. It's really tight with the top 4 now. So they gotta be consistent to be able to continue having this kind of 4-way fight for the title.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, like getting some players back from injury is great. And players like Lowell Wright that you mentioned there, like they've got that ability to get those few minutes. Yeah, he's not made the instant impact, but he's getting those minutes to get up to speed and try and find his niche in the team. And they've got these players that are really working hard. And when you've got such a good sort of backbone to a team, like the Cavalry have, like it gives those players a bit of a chance to, yeah, okay, we'll keep pushing on, but can we do a little bit more in the playoffs than we did last year? Can we go that one step further?
Yeah, and it's gonna depend a lot on their big players continuing to step up, because, like, for me, I'm very happy because you know how much I love Fraser Aird.
Yeah,
You know how much I love Fraser Aird, and the fact he's
get another
just
big man in the box, and
exactly just get another big man in the box because he will deliver.
yeah,
He is freaking the UPS for them right now. Just postal service every time. Back
nice.
post, front post, edge of the
Yeah,
box. He's got it.
yeah,
I feel like him being on form is such a boost for them, and him and Ali Musi as well on that right side. Oh my
yeah,
god, that's delicious.
yeah.
That's so fun to watch. So yeah, as long as those two are are able to stay fit and to stay on that form, then I think Calvary are gonna have a very good shot at being in that four-way fight for the title right up until the end.
Definitely, and like you mentioned there about fitness, I think hopefully, as important as Ali Musi is, I can imagine his minutes are being monitored over these next few weeks. Not to expect 90 minutes of full throttle football from him.
Yeah, but the good thing is that he doesn't need 90 minutes. He could
No,
change the game in half an hour if he really wants to.
exactly. Yeah,
He's that kind of player, so I feel like it's not going to be too much of a problem
no.
for Tommy Wilden Jr., especially with now the kind of players that he has at his disposal.
Mm. Who are you? I'll put you on the spot a little bit, but who are you the most confident on out of these four teams? If you have to pick one for the come the end of the season, we didn't plan this, so I'm putting you right on the spot.
I feel like, I mean, I think it's cheap answer is York United, but just York United because I don't
Yeah.
see a flaw in them right now. Like Forge, if Poku leaves, we'll see what happens. Ottawa, the less said the better about why I'm not confident in Ottawa. And then Calvary, the biggest thing again is consistency for me. But York have proven that they are consistent. They have all their players. It's only if they get injuries and suspensions that we might start to see things maybe get derailed. But on the form that they're on, they're the one that I'm most confident finishing.
Interesting.
Oh, do I say finishing as champions? I feel like that's even still that's a tall ask, but I think they're the ones I'm most confident in right now, just in general.
I think it's just the name York United. It's so hard to say they'll be regular season champions.
I will have to wait until their trophy is raised for me to be able to actually imagine that. I will have to wait until I'm watching the trophy celebration to be able to actually believe that it's happening. What about yourself?
Yeah, again, it's really hard. Like I picked Ottawa at the beginning of the year, but watching these games, I find it hard to expect them to now turn it around and win most games for the rest of not to win every game for the back end of the regular season, but even to win the majority of them without looking at their exact fixture lists. Just see them having those bumps. I think Cavalry could catch them, and the same. But I think if Jordan Hamilton and Terran Campbell hit a little bit of form, it's as boring as it sounds. It's so hard to look past Forge sometimes. Like I really want someone else to do it. I really want someone else to do it in the playoffs, especially. But it's so hard to look past them. Like they aren't playing lights out, amazing, like, oh, they're blowing me away kind of football. They're just playing, well, this is comfortable, we're winning.
Yeah. Two good shouts, but we'll see how the top four picture looks like in the coming weeks. Tune in next week, early next week. We'll try to make it as close as possible so you can enjoy both of these episodes.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
To be able to listen to what we think about the bottom 4 teams, as we mentioned earlier. A lot of talking points.
Quite a few more concerns.
Yeah, 1 or 2 more concerns. Just a couple. But tune in next week for that episode. But for now, that is all for this week. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Thank you so much for staying patient with us after this kind of unplanned break that we had. We really appreciate all of the support that you give to us, and we will try to make sure that we stay super consistent all the way up until the end of the season and bring you a couple more surprises maybe along the way as well.
Yeah.
But for the last time, make sure to listen to us on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube at Coast to Coast FC, as well as following us on all of our socials. And let us know what you think about this week's episodes, what you think about our sort of review on each of the teams. Do you agree with our points? Do you think we missed something? Do you disagree? Let us know on the socials, and we'll try to get a response to you as soon as possible. But until next time, I'm Felipe Ojejo.
And I'm Mike Rice.
And this has been Coast to Coast FC, signing out.